What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to talk about Dying Light the Beast. Give you guys a 10-hour impressions video. I like to beat games when I do a review. I like to have had them beaten, so anything less than that, I try to do impressions. And it kind of goes back and forth with this game. I do overall really like it, but I want to go through its strengths and weaknesses because it kind of caught me by surprise both ways, if that actually makes sense. So, okay, two quick things I want to say before I get too far in. Number one, they gave me a review code, Techland, so I greatly appreciate it. They did not have to do that, but no, I really do appreciate it. It was really nice of them to do. And then number two, and maybe this starts one of potentially the negative things. This game, I could not get this game really to work when it came to capturing. I captured a little bit of gameplay, but I don't know. And I looked up, there was actually originally an issue with Dying Light 2. If you go all the way back, people that tried to capture gameplay or capture footage of Dying Light 2, and I think it's maybe something with like HDR or something with the frame rate that maybe the PlayStation automatically does. But just so you're aware, you'll see a little bit of my stuff, but generally I think we're going to stick to trailers and just overall gameplay because I don't have too much to show you. But I did play it 10 hours. You'll have to trust me. And okay, let's go into the game. Overall, I am happy with it. I think, these taglines of like it being a very like a streamlined, almost a Dying Light game at its best. I think that's accurate. I think, I don't know if it's absolutely at its best. I'll add that absolutely part. But I think, look, if you like Dying Light, you will like this game. And when I say Dying Light, I mean the brand, the franchise, not a specific game. I've told my story before of like Dying Light 1 really caught me by surprise. I wasn't expecting to like it that much. I think it's a phenomenal game. And then Dying Light 2, I played that game like 20 plus hours and it was fine. I'm not saying, I never have said that I hated it. It just never grabbed me to be able to play for hundreds of hours that I think you're capable of doing in these games. But look, Dying Light is always Dying Light. You got the parkour, you got how you can switch out weapons. It's got a structure to it, right? Dying Light, there's a mechanic structure going on, and if you've never liked that, you are not suddenly gonna like it. That's the thing where I wasn't expecting it to like all of a sudden be a totally different game. But you jump in, and I would say a few hours in, you know how everything is going to work. And you could say that's a pro or a con. Like, again, I'm not expecting it to all of a sudden be a totally different game. But within a few hours, you know exactly how the setup is. You know what the side things are. You know what the main things are. You know how the game is going to operate. And in a lot of ways, that was fine. And in some ways, maybe a little disappointing because I thought it would have something that kind of breaks the trend a little bit. And what I mean by that is, quickly, and I'm 10 hours in, you know exactly how it is. So like there's the towers, there's your safe zones. That is one thing that you can do 25 times in this game. There's the kind of locations where you have to turn the power back on. Same thing, 25. I'm maybe exaggerating a little, but there are easily 15 plus of each of these things, right? Side things you're able to do in the game. Things of turning things on, kind of giving you a little bit of a safe haven, okay? You'll have like random survivor encounters, right? There'll be people that are maybe being attacked by a zombie, or I did see a couple really clever ones. I like randomness in my random encounters. And what I mean by that is, okay, well, show me one time a person being attacked by a zombie, or show me another time them being tied up where people are trying to go at them, right? Like actual other survivors. That was super cool. There was one time I came up trying to save a survivor. His hands were tied. There was nobody around him. He broke free, and then the other people came to attack me. It's like, I love, like I said, I mean, that they're all random, but like those are random within random. So you'll have those little moments that you can do throughout the game. You'll have your safe spots that you have to either climb to the top of a tower, which of course requires that parkouring movement type thing, or just take a cable and figure out a way for it to get into a building somewhere. And none of it's bad. I'm not, some of it can actually be rather fun. It does get repetitive though, and that would be my weakness. When I see people saying that this is Dying Light at its best, I feel like that is still an issue, that part in particular. So I'm unwilling to say that it's entirely at its best because it still relies, I think, on the same gimmicks to really, and I'll say it, to pad the length of this game. Now, again, it's not bad. It just adds to it. I think you could have had a Dying Light the Beast game that took 10 hours to beat the entire thing, or you could have a Dying Light the Beast game that takes 30 hours to beat, and the extra time is that extra stuff. Going into a hardware store to find a jacket, and you're going to face generally the same group of enemies. You're going to loot the general same kind of thing. It's always like in another room. You have to like lockpick the door, things like that. They'll repeat. So you'll go in and you'll find your jacket, you'll find your hat, you'll find all this stuff. And there's a repetition there, but again, is it a bad repetition? Not really. It's a good repetition. And here's what I was saying in terms of streamlining it, or like a couple hours in knowing how the game operates. How is that a good thing? The game really throws everything at you right away. I actually still don't have the grappling hook, so I guess that's one thing that I just haven't completed enough missions. But I guess what I'm saying is if you do all these side things, at this point, I'm 10 hours in, right? I have maybe 15 things I can craft. It's unbelievable. And that goes to the game's greatest strength, I think, right? Which is the gameplay. It is the parkour. It's literally the combat and movement systems that this game is very well known for, right? But this game, I do think, elevates that because you're thrown right in. If you do, I did like 10 safe tower, things. And in those, you're going to be picking up all of this stuff. Sometimes it's things to craft. I mean, I can play it 10 hours in however I want to. Does that make sense? So that's something that I really do think is a really great strength with this game. I've never embraced them as well as I should, and I guess what I mean by that is just I pick kind of, if I see like a fancy weapon or a weapon that kind of just suits me, I run it into the ground. I'll repair it multiple times, when in reality, I've gotten better weapons. And even right now, I have like a legendary gun. I have a couple, I think whatever the purple color means. I have some really cool weapons. I've attached mods to them, and I don't even really use them because there's something in my brain that says, well, you're already using a weapon. I know I have 10 others, but I can't possibly swap one out for the other. That's just something that I get in the way of. But I can very much appreciate that with this game in particular, because nothing's too big. Yeah, there is that repetition, but you get very familiar with the world. You get very familiar with how you're going to do your movements to get from one place to the next, because you're generally in the same spot, But as the map kind of starts to branch out, there's different areas of this land. Like one could be more water, one will be more of like a dense city type thing. So you get familiar with it in that way. Kind of where the enemy patterns are and all that jazz. But and then you can play it however you want. And that is undeniably here. You can craft whatever you want. If you're doing things, you will have crafting materials. There's been maybe 2 times that I've tried to, I think maybe like upgrade a mod where I didn't have like one thing in that upgrade. But generally, if I want to craft anything, I have the stuff because I'm a freak with that. I constantly am searching dead bodies, searching all those hardware stores. I'm just looking everywhere. So I have like 400 scraps when really you don't need that, but for some reason I have it. You can do whatever you want, and that is what the game I think's biggest strength. And then I would say the one thing that did disappoint was because of that repetition. And what I always say in these videos, I mean, this is just kind of a classic Alex thing. I prefer that quality over quantity. So if you're going to give me these side missions, I'd prefer 5 really good ones versus 10 kind of fluff ones. And again, like the towers and the restoring power, like that does get into that repetition, but those enemy encounters or survivor encounters, I think that's really, really strong. That is, they do happen kind of often, but they've actually always been different or just different enough, right? So that's one. But I would say the side missions are very meaty, and you're not getting 30 of them. That's like if I'm thrown into The Witcher 3 and I see all those question marks, I'm doing all those question marks. Again, that's just how my mind is. And that game also, I think, is a lot of quality over quantity type stuff. But, if there's a game that'll give you 20 side missions, sorry, main mission, I'm doing the 20 side missions, then I'll get to the main. That's just what I kind of do. The game, I think, does strike a pretty good balance. I think there's too many of the towers and all that stuff, but when it gets down to, you might have 2 or 3 side quests at a time on you, at any point in the game, at least that I'm at so far. But again, I don't think I actually have all that much left. If I really focus on just doing the main stuff, I think this game could probably be beaten in 20 hours max. Now, if you want to do everything, that's how I think, and I think the developers have even said, you can absolutely push this game to 30 35, 40 hours. You can play it multiple times. You can play with other people. I actually had a cool co-op session with somebody who just joined my game, and that made it more fun. We were taking out zombies at double the pace, so it was definitely fun in that way. But I will say that I think the game can do a really good job. The side missions there's just not a lot of them, so you kind of see the writing come through, and there's sometimes impactful choices, or at least what I perceived as impactful. There was one that I think was like a 4-mission arc, and then there was a finale, so 5 missions and just one side thing, and it builds, and eventually you get to kind of the ending, and you get to make a call on a character, and it felt like a story moment. It was a side story, but it was side, right? So I really think they did good there. And then so far, in terms of the main stuff, I'm liking the characters. I'm liking the situation. It's about rebuilding. It's about going after this Baron character and just trying to make sure you have your army, because he already has his army. So I'm liking it. I don't know if anything there is spectacular. I don't know if the writing in general I would call spectacular, but it's such a solid experience. And here's the thing. Dying Light, I think, has always been. I think Dying Light 2 actually was a very solid experience, but stretched far too long. And that's what I would say specifically about Dying Light 2. Dying Light 1 I remember just really liking, and the main thing there is Dying Light 1 was definitely shorter than 2. So if we're talking about kind of returning to form, I do think that's what the Beast is. I do not think it's a perfect form. I think that's kind of where people, at least the people that I've seen online talking about it, it's kind of where like that, it's that gray middle ground where you don't really know if that's what they're saying or if that's not what they're saying. I'll tell you that's what I'm saying. I don't think it is a return to form. It is more about, okay, we stretched it. Let's kind of put it back. Let's give you a lot of agency. Let's let you do as much as you want to do as early as possible. Within 5 hours, you're really going to have a great handle of this game, and you're really going to be able to tackle things how you want. And then the fun is kind of dependent on you. I can make the game more fun by having more grenades or by changing my weapons out, or I could have it less fun by not doing it. And I do some of it, okay? I do. But, that's up to you. And I think the game does a really good job of kind of handing you those keys and saying, go off. Does it mean it's a perfect game? No. The writing is good. I don't know if it's great. The story is good. I don't know if it's great. There is still repetition, even for a game that's supposed to be smaller and supposed to kind of shrink and have, I think, more of the quality versus quantity. There is way too many of the towers and the restoration, putting the power back. Too much of that stuff. So it still does have some flaws, but it's probably less flaws, and it's a smaller game, so they don't, well, in a way, they actually are more highlighted because it's a smaller game, but at the same time, maybe they're not as big of a deal. Because if you don't want to focus on them, you don't have to focus on them. It's still fun to just run around and jump from building to building, go around at night, and be very scared. The game's got a great survival horror. Probably that's one element that's maybe better than it's ever been. There is definitely a survival horror element. These zombies are hard. They're rough. There's a lot of big ones around. And then at night, I don't even play the game. Not night my time, night in the game. I've done it a few times, but man, you get spotted, you're getting chased, and it's very, very hard to get out of that stuff. So the game can get scary, it can get tough, and it can get kind of like tight in that way. And it can also be difficult, in that way that I think I can really respect it. And you do have to scavenge around. Like, if you're not looking for anything ever, you will your weapons will break. You won't have stuff to repair it. You won't be able to kind of enhance yourself. I kind of go for that completionist, 100% thing. So I almost feel I have too much stuff, but the game does, kind of require you to get some stuff. If you get nothing, you're going to have a real tough time in this game, unless you're just always running away. But there's often times they'll throw you in a pit, and they'll throw 15 enemies at you at once and say, okay, deal with it. You got to have something ready, for those enemies. So I'm definitely enjoying my time. I think in a lot of ways it is that return to form, just like I said, not a perfect form. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure, as always, you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on, and I hope to see you all on the next one.